Look, I don't want to shock you too much, but today we're talking about corporate greed. What's fun though is it's not the usual kind of corporate greed. It is all about modding and how modding is becoming big business. And of course, like all good stories, it's got a bit of a villain, and that villain is Wizards of the Coast. They've done an amazing job of ingratiating themselves to people, even though they've had so many wins, like with Baldur's Gate. Though, obviously, that being really good is kind of Larian's fault, so good on them. And they're involved in this story because we've also got words of wisdom from the boss of Larian's Ven on mods and fan games, and the quote from him is, "They shouldn't be treated like commercial ventures that infringe on your property." Of course, a lot of people, including the people he had ended up partnering with to get Baldur's Gate, don't necessarily agree, because they think it is all about their property that they're fine with, you modding, as long as it's on their terms. And this is where today's story about modding actually does change. We're seeing a centralization, a standardization of what modding looks like, and that could, and I believe will, have implications for the future. Now look, let's just be real for a second. You're a gamer, I'm a gamer, and that means we're often really bad at sleep. Thing is though, not anymore. So, come to the front of the class, it is time for a lesson. I went from awful sleep to fantastic sleep, and today's sponsor, Manta Sleep, have been a huge help in my journey. And what Manta does is real simple. They make the best sleep mask that there is. You see, most sleep masks suck. I couldn't find a comfortable one until I came across Manta last winter, and that's really when I had started to take sleep seriously. And now it's, well, honestly, hard to describe just how much better life is without constant onset insomnia, waking up in the middle of the night. I've got the sleep scores to actually prove it, and Manta is a core part of my kit. Here's how it all works, right? So you've got the core Manta Sleep Mask. This is absolutely terrific, and what sets them apart even more is customization and options. You can get, as an example, cooling pads. You can get weighted pads, even this, which is the Bluetooth mask. Now, combine that Bluetooth with maybe white noise, rain sound, spooky story. For me, History of the Universe. I love that YouTube channel. And not only do you, of course, get help going to sleep, you've got all of your light being blocked, sounds outside are being masked by the Bluetooth audio, but of course, unlike having an earphone in your ear, it doesn't stick into your ear and you roll over. This stuff's awesome. It helps you stay asleep. You'll build a stronger circadian rhythm, and that will help you stay on track. Manta's awesome, and you get 10% off using my link and code Bellular News. Let's get a lay of the land. So, barring Nintendo, everyone is now pushing for PC launches as a major part of their business strategy. You cannot afford to not be on PC when the cost of making games is this high. And if you want an amazing example of that being so true, that they were even willing to kind of put out PC when it shouldn't have went out, just look at the Monster Hunter story and the specific financial pressures involved in that being there on PC. Now, of course, with PC ports comes mods, and then add to that the big investor push over the last few years for user-generated content. Because look, why hire as many pesky game developers when you can have your users make the content, and basically you just own the platform and become rich by skimming off the top. It's a pretty good business model, gotta be real. Anyway, the idea that players can consistently make new playable content to keep other people around, all while everybody goes and buys skins, is just perfect. And when these two things dovetail, modding becomes big business. And we have a very relevant case study today that, we can cherry pick as proof. And this is where we go back to Larian. Back in November, Larian's publishing director highlighted that their daily peak concurrent users were up 3%, and that their daily active users were up by 20%, which is insane. Look how long ago that game came out. I mean, it's pretty new, but you get my point. And when he shared those numbers, he said, quote, "Mods are good." Yes, mods really did help Baldur's Gate 3. Its built-in mod system, honestly, is amazing. It is the dream for most companies. And here's why. It's internally moderated. It's cross-platform, meaning that console players can use it, and it clearly works for both the company and users. That's really good, but it's entirely internal. The culture around modding, though, is a little bit different. It's a lot harder for business stakeholders to navigate the culture of modding. And, we found that out because of Larian's partner, Wizards of the Coast. They're not happy. What you're about to see is an absolute abhorrent travesty. It is war against the bottom line. It's Baldur's Village. It's quite lovely. It's a mod that adds the cast of Baldur's Gate 3 to Stardew Valley, and it's impressive. It adds new quest lines, romances, loads of things. People can fulfill their happily ever afters for all of those characters that they love. Well, until a DMCA warning and Nexus mods noted that the mod was suspended and under review. Now, this was because of Wizards of the Coast. They issued that DMCA takedown, and because Wizards of the Coast is not a very well-regarded company, which is honestly impressive to me, well, the DMCA generated quite a bit of attention, especially because the mod is free, even if the devs do have a Patreon, and no business-unfriendly content is present, such as, you know, squidgely bits and fluids and so on and so forth, like they like to put on the Nexus mods. None of that's there, so this really is good old, innocent, happy modding for the gamers. And that meant that to the community there was seemingly little reason to justify DMCA here, especially because under 20,000 people downloaded it, so it's not like it had a massive negative impact, and I don't know about you, but I don't think anyone really expects Wizards of the Coast to, well, make any sort of game that is like this mod. But of course, it generated headlines, especially after Sven, of course, founder of Larian, flagged it on social media. And that all sparked something that we can very much predict. And to make it a little bit more official, Pokemon's former chief lawyer, so that's a powerful dude, told Aftermath, quote, "The worst thing on earth is when your fan project gets press, because now I know about you." I like his vibes. That's threatening. That's kind of badass. Anyway, it seems then that some lawyers noticed IP infringement being highlighted, and they decided that they would go and earn their retainer fee, which they very much did. Now, were these lawyers working for Wizards of the Coast directly, or were they working for a third party? Were they justified? Thankfully, those questions are irrelevant because Wizards gave a statement to PC Gamer. Here's the statement. "The Baldur's Village DMCA takedown was issued mistakenly. We are sorry about that. We are in the process of fixing that now so fans and the Stardew community can continue to enjoy this great mod." Which does sound all pretty good, right? And it all illustrates, right, this tricky little position that the various stakeholders are in for these big games. Mods are a desirable part of the push for user-generated content to extend game longevity. We've literally seen that in Baldur's Gate 3, and it's not just speculation, it is said by their publishing director. But it comes at the cost of giving up control over your product and risking your IP. And that is a culture shock to some. This culture shock is happening more and more. For some publishers and devs, giving up control is hard, and certain games simply will not be able to accept it. And there can be very obvious business model reasons. Marvel Rivals banned modded skins as soon as Season 1 started in January. Obviously, they had to protect their entire cosmetic economy as well as their competitive integrity, right? So you can see why they would do that, but on the other side of the spectrum, we've got, well, every time a new multiplayer game like, say, Repo or Lethal Company launches, it's almost no time until we get the mods that do end up increasing player counts, modifying models, doing all of those things. Like that crazy thing for Lethal Company that added in like a whole system where the voice chat of your teammates would basically be gobbled up by the mod, and spooky creatures would be talking with the voices of your friends. Insane. And amazing value for the game. And what this has led to is a tension. On the one hand, we do have indie devs who broadly do love this shit, and AAAs who, are not always great. One example of that's Take-Two. They are famous for their absurd takedowns of anything related to Grand Theft Auto modding. Like, insanely so. And that's in spite of those mods giving birth to the GTA roleplay scene, which has been a massive line of business for them. But in some recent years, while they're still targeting some mods, even Take-Two have actually relented a little bit. So here's an interesting thing. They have bought some of the 5M team, those are some of the people behind some of the bigger mods. They're officially helping to port mods to the new Definitive Edition. Elsewhere then, Saber Interactive banned mods for Space Marine 2 public servers, but at the very same time, they then announced plans to release modding tools so that people could use them in private games. And then there's Naughty Dog. I don't think people would have expected this, but they've actually been really zen about mods for their PC ports. Game Informer presented the game director Matthew Gallant with the idea of someone replacing Ellie's model with Shrek in The Last of Us Part 2 remaster in PC, and he basically just said, once the game's out, out, well, they just have to accept that people will do what they want. That's pretty zen. I like that. It's absolutely a good thing that Baldur's Village went that way. However, that's not really the end of this video. In a way, it's not even the true story of this video. The true story of this video has actually got a lot to do with Baldur's Gate 3, where mods are official. On PC, you can of course download Baldur's Gate mods from places like Nexus and just go and run them. But those are not the official mods. The official mods are the ones that exist in the self-contained Baldur's Gate 3 modding platform. And it is not a small platform. To give you some numbers, the top mod has got 4 million downloads. And it's the only way that mods can of course proliferate over to the console version of that game. Which, hey, is incredible. Console players can get mods. Sick. I really like that. But those mods are themselves moderated, and they do have content restrictions. And some of that is understandable. They probably don't want libelous content. They probably don't want things that violate the age rating, shall we say. But to take a kind of mimetic example, no third-party IP means that you cannot put Thomas the Tank Engine in Baldur's Gate. And it's not just Baldur's Gate. In recent years, we've seen this happen for City Skylines 2 and almost every modern Bethesda game. I mean, the latter's even got a store for mods. So these companies are building a system that allows for easy mod building, easy searching, easy access, minimal installation issues, not as much faffing around with load orders and all that fun from back in the day, but they are closed ecosystems with limits on what is allowed and hosted. And players, I'm noticing, are often outraged by this centralization of mods. Outraged. But not because it represents a threat to the free principles of modding culture. No, because it's centralized in the wrong place. That's where it gets interesting. The Paradox modding platform is not bad because it's under Paradox's thumb. It's bad because Steam Workshop support is what people want, and Steam Workshop is modding for a huge number of players. And here's where we get to a central tension. The moderation, the rules, the third-party IP things, those, well, they're not really supposed to be there in the Steam Workshop, right? Many of those same rules exist for Steam Workshop, but they're basically not enforced, or at least they're nowhere near as enforced as they are on those centralized per-game modding platforms. So, this is where it's interesting. It's a great thing that people can access mods, especially in consoles, but we need to remember why these modding platforms are being made. It all goes back to the tension this video started with. Companies want player-created content for their games. They are happy to support that content because what it basically means is their games last longer. They last longer, they're played by more people, so whenever they have a DLC or cosmetics, there are more people around to actually buy them. That's obviously good for the companies, they're happy to support that, but there are limits on what those companies will permit. Wizards have relented on Baldur's Valley, which is good, but it does open the door, them doing that, for people to put characters, right, fan-favorite characters, on any mod going forward, because they can see that Wizards made this call. And so for Wizards, they may have dodged a short-term thing here, but they also might have set a precedent that will lead to people putting their characters into mods in a way that they do not like, meaning they would probably have to clamp down on that, which would then piss everybody off again. But here's the rub. That's only a problem if it happens on the Nexus, or it happens on some forum. If you are inside their closed modding ecosystem, well, they will be thrilled to have you there. Their problem is that the ultimate solution would be to remove open source modding, and there are likely ways they can do that, but they probably know that's not a feasible thing, and it would certainly make them look like absolute unhinged villains. So what they're going to do, and what they are doing, is basically the Valve approach. And that is to give people an easy, simple solution that is convenient. Because Steam has got loads of DRM, loads of things that if they crop up on Epic or any other storefront, people are absolutely goddamn irate. And this might be weird, it might sound weird to some people who have only grown up knowing Steam. I was playing PC games before Steam existed. I mean, yeah, I was very young, but I remember people being angry at Steam. They were angry with Half-Life 2 and Steam, okay? But what happened with Steam is it ended up being such a good service that people accepted those downsides. We're going to see that happen more and more with mods. The overt plan, if you're one of these companies, is to build out your own little fiefdom of user-generated content, which is absolutely amazing because you just conscript legions of people who are throwing their passion into it. It all goes into your closed little garden that will go across all your different platforms, you will juice up your player numbers. That will be really good for you. So it's worth us kind of remembering exactly who ultimately benefits from this shift in how modding works, from being completely open to happening on strange little fiefdoms that exist within games. If I was to place bets, I would say there will be a lot of drama from this tension moving into the future, and at least one way in which there will be drama is this is going to have to come back to monetization. Bethesda are already doing that. Minecraft, as an example, is already doing that. Why is it not being done for City Skylines, for Baldur's Gate, for any of the countless games that are going to have systems like this? That's what I would expect. So be on the lookout. It'll be fun to see how it goes. And, well, if you want to see something pretty dramatic, oh boy, the next video is the one for you.